Hi there. It's May the 14th, and we're continuing our journey through the good news of John, and we're in chapter 8, reading from verses 1 to 20. Just reminding ourselves, this is the time of the Feast of Sheds, the Feast of Tabernacles, the time when Jesus has come to Jerusalem, and he's already declared himself to be the river of life, or to be the one who is bringing the water of life, and he's declared himself to be Messiah at a time when there's a high messianic expectation. And this continues into chapter 8, and we find the scribes and Pharisees trying to get the better of him, trying to trap him. And so here in this chapter, Jesus has returned to the temple, and he is presented with a woman who has been taken in the act of adultery. And she is brought in shame before him. They throw her down in front of Jesus, and they say, the law says that she should be stoned. What do you say, Jesus? And so they're trying to get Jesus to say something which is against the law. And Jesus simply writes in the dust. In writing in the dust, some scholars say he draws attention away from the woman. They want to know what he's doing. And John draws our attention to the fact that Jesus is doing something else. But then he looks up and he says, okay, he says, let any of you, anamatitos, is what he says, any of you who is without sin, any of you who's a non-sinner, let him throw the first stone. And of course, this is a great challenge to those who are gathered, because anyone who says they're not a sinner cannot be taken seriously. And so they realize that Jesus has the better of them. They all melt away from the highest, from the leaders, right to the least. And then Jesus turns to the woman and says, where are your accusers? And she says, there's no one here. And Jesus says, well, I don't condemn you. Go. But importantly, he doesn't just let her go and say, that's all right, we'll overlook it. He says, go and sin no more. So he identifies what she has done as sin, but he's not about to expose her. He doesn't want to publicly shame her, and he wants to free her from the shame of others. And then Jesus has a discussion with the scribes and the Pharisees, coming out of the fact that he says, I am the light of the world. Now, it's important to note here that on the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, something spectacular happened in the temple courts in Jerusalem. Four great menorot were lit. A menorah is this is a menorah, the seven-branch candlestick that is the symbol of Israel, and four of these were lit, really high menorah that could be seen all around Jerusalem. And this was the great festival of light that marked the end of the Festival of Tabernacles. And it's in this context that Jesus in John 8 says, I am the light of the world. And then the scribes and Pharisees take issue with him because he's pointing to himself. It's amazing that Jesus' teaching points to himself. And they say, your teaching isn't valid because you're just pointing to yourself. And Jesus says, no, my teaching is valid because I have another witness, and the witness is my Father. And they say, well, where is your Father? And Jesus said, well, if you knew me, you'd know my Father. If you knew my Father, you'd know me. I come from him. And actually says, in your law, scribes and Pharisees, you who know the law, it says that two witnesses are sufficient to testify to a fact. So there's me and there's my Father, and we witness. But you're not listening to my witness. You're not taking any notice of what I'm saying. You're missing the whole point. But it does say that they still weren't able to arrest Jesus at this point. It says because his time wasn't come. Jesus knows that there's an appointed time, and it's not this time. We know, of course, that he is waiting for Passover, because Passover is going to be the time when it's the symbol of Israel's deliverance. It's a symbol of the world's deliverance, therefore, from the power of evil. And he's waiting for that Passover time to come, which will come a few chapters later. But they're not able to get hold of him. So Jesus in this chapter is very much pointing to himself as the light of the world. He's pointing to himself as the one who frees from the condemnation of the law. And he's pointing to himself as being the one to whom the Father witnesses. Let's be confident then today that as Jesus lights up our lives with his presence, that we can also be reflectors of that light to those around us, because Jesus also says of us that we are the light of the world for him. Have a very good May the 14th.